All right, we will move on to the Life Science and Healthcare panel. We had originally invited Professor Art Reingold as our moderator. Unfortunately, due to a last-minute family emergency, he cannot be here with us right now. From the bottom of our heart, we wish Art the best. At the same time, we are lucky to have Vera Xiao, a second-year MBA student at Berkeley Haas, to step in for Art as the moderator. She's actually the organizer for the Life Science and Healthcare panel, with experience in healthcare consulting and health tech. Let's welcome Vera.
Thank you, Betty. Hi, everyone. We are very honored to have our 3 life science healthcare experts joining us at today's panel. We have Zhouming. We have Tang Zhouming, Zhang Yongwei. He also go by Victor, and then Dr. David Drubin. Zhouming is the CEO and CTO of the Intelligent Haptronic Solutions. IHS is a startup providing VR and AR simulation solutions that refines surgical training. Zhouming earned his Master of Science from Simon Fraser University in Canada with a focus in medical robotics and haptics. Prior to starting his own company, he spent more than 6 years as a senior silicon architecture verification engineer at Microsemi, a California-based provider of semiconductor and system solutions. Victor is the CEO of BGI Americas region. BGI provides a wide range of NGS services and genetic tests to advance life science research. BGI was also one of the first that launched the COVID-19 test kit in China. Victor has over 20 years of experience in optics-based instruments and systems and diagnostic industry. He earned his Master of Science and PhD degree in mechanical engineering from Johns Hopkins University. Dr. David Drubin is the department co-chair of molecular and cell biology at UC Berkeley. He has been with Berkeley for 32 years as a faculty. His research focuses on life cell imaging, molecular and cell biology, genetics, and biochemistry. Previously, he served as editor-in-chief of the American Society for Cell Biology's research journal, Molecular Biology of the Cell, for 10 years. He received the Ira Hertzwaltz Award from the Genetics Society of America in 2008 and was elected to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences in 2010. Please welcome them. Before we get started, I just want to remind our audience on the streaming, feel free to leave any questions as we go through the panel. At the end of the panel, we will open up for Q&A. So David, Victor, and Zhouming, thank you for joining today, and we would like to start. So with the pandemic, many industries are forced to change and adapt. Life science and healthcare industry is definitely at the heart of the pandemic. So from your area, what have been some of the immediate and near-term impacts you have seen? Maybe we'll start with David.
Okay, well, the first impact we saw was that everything completely shut down. But then we had a ramp up where we started things again at lower density research. And there was a large pivot because a lot of people now adapted their expertise, both in academia and in the biotech industry, because of the urgency of this pandemic to try to solve things, you know. And one of the products of the university is it not only produces new knowledge, but it produces a highly trained workforce. And one of the big concerns right now is that the careers of a lot of people are kind of slowed down, and there's a pipeline of training people. At the other end, the number of jobs has gone down because a lot of companies aren't hiring. And so we're a bit afraid right now of what's going to happen to our students who are being trained to be the next generation leaders in research. But overall, the community has done quite well, I think, in terms of ramping up their research again and focusing on the current urgent matter of this pandemic.
Thanks. Victor, what's your take on that?
I agree with David. We had first of all, it's shut down, and our normal genomics business pretty much came to a halt when the pandemic broke out. First in China, then later on in different parts of the world. And that's the first thing we saw. But immediately, or you can call it simultaneously, that we saw a strong need for the COVID-19 solutions, and BGI happened to be one of the first to be able. We have the ability, and we immediately our senior leadership saw that this is important to develop a diagnostic test for COVID-19 to fight for it. So we are one of the first companies who got our COVID test kit cleared by Chinese FDA. So once that started, our efforts, we essentially BGI has about close to 7,000 employees. We probably mobilized super majority of them to put into the COVID fight, and that of course started in China, then later on roll around the world. And we actually in US we actually built a bigger team to support all the COVID needs. And in China, where our headquarters is, we actually send various people to different parts of the world, because this is new to every place, and we happen to have a little more experience than other people. So we send people to different parts of the world to help to fight COVID-19. So that we thought it will be only carry on for a few months, but that was wrong. And currently, at this particular moment, more than 6 months after the pandemic hit the US, we are still having a great need to fight for that. So I think right now our business, at least in US, is about over 90%. In America, it's over 90% are still on COVID-19.
I see. Yeah, BGI definitely has done a lot of heavy lifting work in terms of fighting COVID in the past couple months. We're gonna circle back to that again. Zhouming, what's your take?
So IHS is a medical robotics startup company. We're focusing on GI endoscopy simulation training development. So we worked with many hospitals, medical schools in China as well as Canada. So I would summarize in two areas. One is the endoscopy practice, GI endoscopy practice, and the other one is the training. So in terms of practice, so we found that based on these guidance from Canadian Association of Gastroenterology and the American Society of Gastrointestinal Endoscopy and WHO, we found that the largely reduced practice amount of practice. Only essential endoscopic procedure is proceed, and also the requirement of special PPE protocols, and also the operating environment protocols. So, for example, if you're a suspected or confirmed COVID-19 patient and deemed to be essential endoscopy procedure, so then you will be placed on a designated like the operating room and recovery room. So the room will be like negative pressure airborne infection isolation room. They'll be in line with like level 3 biosafety requirements. So, and in addition to that, a special protocol of handling the equipment. So all these extra overhead around this practice, which leads to the training for endoscopy procedure extremely challenged. So we all know that endoscopy is a procedure heavy basic procedure heavy training. So they rely on a lot of patient-based training. Right now in current situation, I think in the foreseeable future as well, the patient-based training will be significantly reduced. And in addition to that, like the in-person, like the normal training in-person academic activity, like teaching conferences, the residency rotations at hospital sites will also significantly reduce. So it transformed to asking, beg for a new method. And so we also noticed that actually globally there are many GI residency program has been adjusting for their training and curriculums. For example, they're introducing more of video conferencing, video teaching. But most importantly, they see the simulation-based training play a much bigger role in terms of the whole training curriculum. So the current simulation-based training, the vendors mostly was able to fulfill some of the requirements, like you can practice some of the basic or semi advanced procedures in a VR environment without really need a real patient. And for example, you can do some rehearsal your skills to prepare some of the procedures. But there's significant drawbacks. For example, the experts still require experts to be hand-holding. This applies to a lot of trainings, surgical trainings, not only GI endoscopy, but laparoscopic, etc. Right? So it also has a drawback, like difficult in terms of assessing a system. You have to go to a training center that might not be accessible, that conveniently accessible. So we are offering multiple. We see this challenge from IHS, and we are offering GI endoscopy solutions to in multiple fronts to battle this uncertain situation in the future. I'll go into detail a bit more in terms of aligning to a future of training. So, yeah.
Thank you. We're definitely gonna ask you more questions on that. Let me go back to David. You mentioned that so unfortunate side is you're worried about the pipeline where the placement of all the trained workers. On the other side, you also mentioned there are a lot of projects ramping up. I know you have been working on the government-funded university researches in the past 30 years. I'm curious from the project side, what's your take on those researchers in playing role in protect the public from global pandemics? And then what role do you think it can play in the future?
Right. Well, a university like the University of California, Berkeley has a tremendous amount of expertise. So there's expertise in business, in engineering, in public health, epidemiology, in chemistry, biochemistry, virology, and it's a kind of a unique environment where when a problem arises, people can start to talk to each other and collaborate and work together to solve problems. And that's one of the things that has been quite remarkable during this time, is that a lot of people from different disciplines in the university have come together to leverage their expertise to try to advance the testing capabilities, vaccine development, and therapies. And this is happening at many levels. My department is a huge department with about 100 labs. That means 100 professors at each of a lab. And I would say about 20 of those labs now have a COVID project in them. And most of that work is very basic because this is a new disease, a new virus, and they're trying to work out really fundamental knowledge. That knowledge will be very useful in developing therapies for this pandemic. And normally academics kind of work by themselves because that's how they get credit for things. They publish papers and get authorship. And what's really been nice right now is to see papers are getting published really fast, and some of them will have 50 authors, which is very unusual. Normally they might have anywhere from 2 to maybe 10 authors would be a really large list of authors. So people are collaborating, and across the US and internationally, they're collaborating, combining their expertise. And so, um, one of my concerns, going forward is this pandemic. So we know a lot about this family of viruses, the coronaviruses. This is the third coronavirus epidemic we've had in less than 20 years. And there's something like 5,000 of these viruses. And there's going to be more epidemics. And so we need to not lose all of this expertise that's being developed both in industry and in the universities. And so there has to be a way that we don't have to start over again next time, because there will be a next time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Victor, from your perspective, I know, so BGI did, like you mentioned, have worked in many parts of the world. Can you share your view on that? And is there any recommendation, like as we go into the flu season and as what David mentioned, as we are trying to prepare for the future?
So I think what we can say is that science worked. I think that everybody, at least most people agree that science worked. And we, although this coronavirus is relatively new, but the scientists, including some of the BGIs and around the world, quickly, just as David said, put in effort to understand the virus. And we quickly understand that right now we are making a tremendous progress. I heard from therapeutic side, they know the mechanism, they try to fight it, and in the vaccine world, and they are making tremendous progress. And the BGI, of course, are not in those fields. BGI are in the diagnostic side. So on the diagnostics, the science worked, meaning that when the first coronavirus came out, and BGI is in genomics, and we are not the first, but we were among the first to sequence the RNAs, the virus RNAs, to understand the virus. Only when you know the sequence of the RNAs, then you can figure out how to detect them and to do the diagnostics. So we have our capabilities in genomics built over the years, the science. So all those years that the effort put in, not only in BGI, but also around the world, in putting have the capabilities to do these scientific studies paid off. And so we quickly understand it. Well, that's the reason it enabled BGI. It took BGI less than 10 days to come up a diagnostic kit, and took the Chinese FDA for 2 or 3 days to fast track the approval. So all those could not happen if we didn't have a solid foundation, scientific understanding, and capabilities. From BGI side, the capabilities about the development. You have developed the diagnostic so quickly. You have to have the supply chain. You have manufacturing, quality, everything. All those things we built over the years. When the crisis hit, we leverage everything, get them, and then we can get the kit out in just 2 weeks. And so once we got approval, you still have to make those kits. And also another thing is about second thing worked is about I call the large scale screening. You have to do a large scale tests for this kind of pandemic. So Wuhan, BGI set up a lab in Wuhan, and we quickly initially the test capacity is in Wuhan, whole Wuhan is in hundreds, and we said that's no way to catch up to figure out to help to fight the virus. And we built the lab with aim to do 10,000 a day. So we built the lab within 10 days to ramp up. To do that, again, I want to attribute it to, as David mentioned, every aspect, including engineering. One example is that for diagnostic, you have another kit, which everybody understands in healthcare is important. But when the scale, capacity is your bottleneck, no matter how many kits you have, if you cannot process sample fast enough, cannot run a test fast enough, it's useless. So the engineering side also helps. So the lab we put on, we have the automated solution to help to process samples, to extract the RNAs, to run the RNA detection automatically. So that bring up the capacity. So these, the science and the engineering, the foundation we have built over the years definitely help to make it work. And that's in China that we did it in Wuhan. But in June, if you have heard or read the news, in Beijing, they suddenly have some outbreak, right? in hundreds. And again, Chinese institutions and companies, including BGI, we went to Beijing, set up a daily capacity of 100,000. Within 2 weeks, we tested millions. Then Beijing is put on rest. In July, Shenzhen tested two positive cases, and BGI's headquarters happened in Shenzhen. We again, within 1 week, we tested 2 million. So, and then the thing went away. So because after you widespread testing, you know that you are not letting anything through. Now the life can be back to normal. I know that in Americas, including Canada and the US, I'm not just saying about US, and also Latin Americas, and we are still far from that widespread testing and large scale testing. But my view is that based on what we learned in various parts of the world, large-scale testing is one of the key to help it. So looking down the road about, as David mentioned, there are possible other viruses, there are possible other kinds of pandemics. So from diagnostic industry, we have to be prepared. Not only have the science behind us, we have capability to understand it, but also have the engineering capabilities and the manufacturing capability to ramp up the support. So if you remember back in March and April, and US CDC admitted that they didn't have enough test kits. That played a big role in terms of delayed responses. And of course, we are very happy to see that right now, FDA has stepped up. They have approved hundreds of kits based on FDA EUA. BGI is one of them, and we are seeing more and more testing. And I think the turnaround time is getting shorter. But there are still supply issues, but we are seeing much better response rate. So I'm hoping that in the fall, and we are better equipped to fight it through large scale testing and to help support the economy back to normal.
Yeah, that's definitely very impressive on how BGI has been helped the China to react to that so quickly. Like I think Victor and David, both of you are mentioning is like the science, the engineering are all at the core of this, and then all of that is about development. It's about innovation. I'm curious that do you see innovation? I know right now innovation has been heavily focused on the COVID-19 related areas. Do you see innovations being paused or reprioritized in some other areas? I think this question I would like to direct to Zhouming because your company is focused on GI side, which is impacted but not directly related to COVID-19. What's your take on that? What have you seen? I think we can't really hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, thanks for the question. So I see that the trend on the surgical training in general is that we call for less patient-based training, more standardization in terms of assessments. So these also in line with the transform caused by more of accelerated by the pandemics, call for more accessible, high quality training, more robust and can be remotely accessible training. So as for GI endoscopy, we know that so in China as well as in Canada or in US, they all see this trend on leveraging simulation-based system, leveraging VR, AR, robotics in artificial intelligence to basically make the training more accessible, more standardized, more of in line with their curriculum. So there are a big difference between China's training market and North American, both Canada and US training market. but we see that the inline the trend is about the same. So for IHS, we are offering revolutionary methods to tackle these challenges. For example, so the accessibility is an issue. If someone wants to go to a training center, a simulation center to have a time on the system, they need to book with the training program manager, and also to be meaningfully practice, you need to have experts time to be guided with you. We are offering not only the regular system, which is designated for the training center, but also a light version of like a lot more portable desktop form factors to be designated for trainees, residents to can be signed off by them and practice at home. And in addition to that, we are offering these training curriculums that are backed by AI engine with the experts, we call it expert system, that provide real-time guidance, comprehensive assessment. So these data are backed by our partner hospitals, experts, and training cohorts that we are able to provide quality guidance and assessments of trainings, which largely eliminate hand-holding of experts. And then also we have the cloud platform that we offering trainees to subscribe that they can download their data, training data analytics, and they can also download their experts that they want to learn from, download their high quality training data and analytics, so that they can it can be high quality learning assessed anywhere. So, and then for we're also offering like the VR training software that without need of hardware system, that focusing on knowledge based training. A lot of training topics might not need the maneuver of the equipment. So for that, we don't really need a mandatory on-site hospital site training. So all these offering can give a place a different meets different needs on more agile of style training program that in light of the pandemic, and in the future, I see that it should be a trend.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I want to go back to David and back to you again, because I think university also play a big role in terms of innovation. Like we just heard from Victor and Zhouming, right? Like innovation is also about speed and quickly get to the market. So to your view, like what's the best way to translate discoveries or work done from the government-funded research into practical applications that could actually be used to benefit the society?
Okay, well, let's see. No single company could compete with the investment that a government makes in research, whether it's in China or in the U.S. The public sector university research effort is enormous, and the budget, it's billions of dollars that are invested. But the good thing for industry is that the work that's done, that's funded by the government, is generally gets into the public domain, so it gets published, and so people in industry can benefit from that. But you don't always want to wait for things to go through peer review and revisions and all that before you get the information. And so I think that it's really important and valuable to have partnerships between industry and and academia, public research. Just yesterday in my department, molecular and cell biology, we had a big event called the Industrial Affiliates Program, where we bring in companies that want to partner with us. And it's a really mutually beneficial thing, because a lot of researchers on the campus would like to see their work translated, so they make connections to translate their research into some benefit for society, and that's what Victor and Zhouming's companies are doing, is making new techniques available, technologies that benefit society. And so one avenue is by sort of direct partnerships. There also is possible for industry to sponsor research in a university. And another thing is that departments like my department has many spin-off companies. So people may make a discovery and realize that it has some commercial application, and they will start a company. And just yesterday, I heard a talk from a new company that one of our PhD students started called Scribe Therapeutics, and they're trying to find new ways to treat. Already, they've only like half a year old, but they're already trying to find new ways to treat the COVID disease. So I think that either spin-off companies or partnerships are really valuable. Communication, I think more and more academia and people in academia are really willing and interested in talking to people in companies, but also many of them are starting their own companies.
Yeah, that's very good to hear that there is a movement. There is a lot of people are doing that transition and taking that knowledge into the market. We have actually started receiving questions from the audience, so maybe I'll just recouple and see what's your take on that. So the first question is, David, earlier you mentioned that this is the first time. This is not the first time actual coronavirus or that kind of family has infected human beings. So what is the most important lesson we can learn from this pandemic?
Good question. Yeah, because there was the original SARS, and then there was MERS, and now there's SARS-CoV-2. What is the most important lesson? I think that we have to trust in science. I think Victor made that point. We have to be ready to mobilize very quickly, and these pandemics have to be attacked on many levels. There has to be a strong public health effort. Things like social distancing, wearing masks, testing is really, really important. And we have to. It takes a. I think the government has to support this by making investments in, the government should make investments in terms of supporting testing companies, for example. So plays a very big role in this. And, I think one thing that I've seen that's really helpful is, businesses have a right to make a profit, but also, if the goal is really to speed things up, transparency and sharing information really moves things along, because if everyone is solving the problem on their own, then they're going to be repeating it. People are not going to be benefiting from each other's mistakes and the lessons they learn. And so if there are ways to open up communication and to share information more freely, I think that really helps.
Yeah, that's very important. You mentioned sharing, so I have to ask you this question. So we know that China and the US markets have been very different in many ways. We have very different cultural norms, regulatory process, and even legal limitations. And especially under the current political climate, like that kind of collaboration and sharing may not be as easy as we anticipated. I'm curious to hear what's your take on that, or what do you believe how, like, what's your take on how, researchers and companies can help work together, in China and the US to solve problems, to build that trusting, sharing relationship? Victor, you worked at BGI, which actually worked in both countries. So what's your opinions on that?
So I acknowledge that right now these are right now a little bit difficult times for the collaboration between China and the US, and even in academic world, but in private company industry side is even more difficult. And but what I suggest, what we are working with our partners in US and in China is that we are try to follow the first of all follow the industry norms, and also complete the compliant with the local laws regulations. And for example, and when a lot of collaboration, if it is done in open forum, it will be good. For example, we can collaborate with academic institutions, and we can jointly apply for grants. If it's approved, it's approved. If not approved, it's not approved. And we can jointly do research, and in published format, we publish in peer-reviewed journals. Those are, I think, we should feel comfortable working on that. And working with the private companies, and we, instead of right now, I know that full acquisition of any US companies has to go through the regulatory reviews by federal government. We understand that, and so we are taking a different approach. Instead of investment or full acquisition, we're working through the business partnerships, the business agreements, and which most, if with a public company, it's public, and a lot of things are open in the sun, and that will, I think, help all sides, not only China but US side, to feel comfortable with all the collaboration we have. So those are the approach we are taking. Of course, and we are very optimistic that in the face of science or engineering, and people, especially in healthcare industry, people have the common goal. We want to develop better technologies, innovations for the health and welfare of all people. So I think time will things will get better, and we will continue to work with all our partners around the world, and in any ways that good for this industry.
Yeah, that's very nice to hear that. Zhouming, I know your company is based in Canada, but you also do business in China. From your perspective, what's your take on that?
Right. We not only do business with Chinese customers. We actually have a headquarter in Shenzhen, China as well. We're international team startup, special startup company. So we have two headquarters. One is in Vancouver, and one is in Shenzhen. So we do see increasingly. I probably talk about we're trying to for example, do some financing. So we also trying to raise capital in both China and Canada, and so it become increasingly difficult if you want to play both at the same time. So that's one thing, and people become a lot more cautious in the last year or two. And also in terms of the medical training side, so I guess that's common sense that so if, for example, if you want to build a curriculum that's backed by some of your partner hospitals, you're trying to make it standardized. You're trying to sell it to broader customers. So if you want to reach out to North American market, then all these credibility you earn from working with China's hospitals partners, that's not really relate. So you're gonna do work with partner hospitals locally in Canada. If you want to enter in the States, more like work with the States hospitals as well. So yeah, it's been difficult.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's certainly difficult, and then there is probably, like Victor said, there's also opportunities. We have questions. So this is more regarding the maybe more in Zhouming your expertise in terms of the virtual side. So one of our audience asked, so COVID-19 has driven more and more adoption of virtual health. So we see a lot of uprising in telemedicine, that kind of solutions. What are your perspective on the telemedicine post-pandemic? Do you think that will continue?
Yes, I do see this technology being show a lot of advantages. In terms of like I will talk about a couple areas. One is the in terms of more basic trainings. For example, doing IV injections. For example, doing practice for nursing for calming down a nursing home, a more panic patients, etc. All these can be done by using VR technology and using the AI backed by AI engine that trying to. So we actually, one of our partners working on this area that their language learning engine can not only communicate with trying to do a virtual patients and virtual trying to training with a virtual patient, communicate with the virtual patient, but also identify their not only identify their language but also identify their emotions as well. That's part of the basic training. In more advanced practices and training, for example, for surgical. We know that this famous intuitive surgical California-based teleoperation giant that have this Da Vinci system that for supporting a teleoperation. But I know a lot of quite a few similar Chinese companies working on this as well. So in terms of training, surgical training, so we do see these advantages. So we understand that patient-based training is very important and critical because so a lot of practices, the procedure, advanced procedures, it is very difficult for current simulation based system can replicate. Based on for example, for the endoscopy side, GI endoscopy, the American Society of Gastrointestinal Endoscopy, they published a lot of papers studying the current simulation systems that they found the bottlenecks for the system for great adoption or more of possible greatly replacing patient-based training is the bottleneck is that they are not first of all they are not have comprehensive the real-time guidance and assessment, standardized assessment that can be really comparable to let's say experts assessments or it can be replacing altogether experts guidance and assessments. But we do foresee that we're confident that these will be achieved and in a very near future. So that's what I foresee.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. We have time maybe for one last question. We will end with more optimistic view. So the question is, what do you envision the future of your line of work gonna be post pandemic? We'll start with David.
Well, the post-pandemic. Let's see. So it's funny. A lot of things have are changed right now, and I'm very curious myself to know what's going to be the long-lasting effects. In the researchers right now, because we work at reduced density, they spend more time at home, instead of doing experiments like working in a lab. And so they are spend a lot more time thinking and coming up with ideas, which sometimes is hard for a trainee to do, is to take a step back and think about the big picture. And so I think that that's maybe something that that has been a positive innovation. I've seen a tremendous amount of collaboration, and I really hope that, and this is people across really diverse disciplines who have found the power of working together, that you can do a lot of things that you can't do if you just stick in your own sort of lane, doing what you've been trained to do. But if you get together with someone whose background and knowledge can complement yours, together you can do something that neither of you could do alone. And so I guess I hope that those sort of things might be positive, long-lasting effects.
Thanks. We hope so too. Victor, what's your vision?
So I'm very optimistic, and so after this pandemic has essentially taught every one of us a lesson, right? We have to be humble in the face of nature, and we have to trust the science. We have to have the science capabilities, and I think people right now understand the importance of the healthcare and the diagnostics in the industry we are in. They know that you can live without an NBA game, but you cannot live without life scientists to help you to fight the disease. So people understand that. And I think one positive effect I can share with you is that, for example, that one of our divisions, BCS divisions, was raising funding in 2019. And it was quite difficult, right? Because for the VC point of view, they just want to get better returns, right? They can invest in IT, in anything, right? Healthcare is just one of the disciplines. It's their options. And so it was difficult. But quickly in 2020, when the pandemic hits, people realize that this is an industry that you need no matter what. So the VCs realize that, even though they are chasing returns, and we close our round pretty quickly. So that's very positive. And I also agree with David is that in face of this pandemic, I can see a lot of true collaborations. People are truly working together, helping each other, and that's another positive thing I can see throughout, not only between companies and companies, between academic institutions, but also just people, person to person, and we can see a lot of good stories if you read the news. And overall, I think this is silver lining of the pandemic. Overall, I'm very, very positive. After the pandemic, and things will become better for everyone.
Thank you for sharing that. It's touchy. Zhouming, how about you?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with the two speakers. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. For me, I would be just thinking of like again the China and U.S. Relations post-pandemic still very. I'll be in like continue the topic from the previous panel. So like also it's very challenging for entrepreneurs, for startup technology startup companies. All these news is really make every entrepreneur anxious, especially for like I do know a lot of companies, technology company require and need collaboration internationally. Yeah, so that's I sort of pessimistic on that part. The rest is more optimistic.
Okay. Thanks. I think the takeaway overall is we understand the process is gonna be It's going to take some time, and it could be challenging in some way, but we got to trust science, we trust the process, and we trust that collectively we can fight this, and then we will build our future. All right, thank you all for coming. I know it's a Saturday night. We are so honored that you decide to spend your Saturday night with us and share your insights. Thank you just so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vera.
Katie, your turn.
Thank you, Vera, and all the panelists for such a wonderful discussion. Thank you again. International collaboration, and we definitely have confidence in all the staff and personnel and professors and entrepreneurs in the fight together against the pandemic. And ladies and gentlemen, there will be a 15-minute networking session with the panel shortly. Again, please look for the link to the virtual networking room in the YouTube and Baidu chat box, as well as in your handbook. Now, I want to invite a student leader on stage, co-president of 2020 Berkeley China Summit, a postdoc in molecular cell biology, Suifang Mao, together with 2 other co-presidents. Suifang led a dedicated team of students to put together this wonderful event. Suifang, please give us a few words.
Thank you, Betty. Hello, everyone. On behalf of the BCS student committee and grad student and research scholar from Berkeley, I would like to thank you all for being here. At the beginning of 2020, we are struggling to stay safe, connect to the world, and adjust new life and work. And through this conference, we hope that you have got a better idea how we can better adjust to the life and work in post-pandemic, and how the technology can empower us to redefine and reconnect to the world. At the end, I would like to give special thanks to our dedicated student volunteer and alumni aboard volunteer. A lot of hard work and teamwork have paid off. And we would like to see you all back here next year. Go Bears. Thank you.
Thank you, Suifang, for your and your team's hard work. On behalf of the entire 2020 Berkeley China Summit organization, I want to thank you for tuning in to reconnect with Berkeley and with us in redefining our lives together. We look forward to seeing you next year on the Berkeley campus, as well as virtually, of course, since the new norm has already been redefined. See you in 2021 and have a fantastic evening or day. And go Bears!